Not so much. Something is missing. There's a missing link between the K-12 and the actual 4 years. So how do we work that out? So City College was born. Again, our student population is more than 50% students of color. The largest demographic being Latino and Asian Pacific Islander. Okay? So we have some retention programs. Sort of what we came to talk about today. So retention programs. We have EOPS. Anybody know EOPS? One person. All right. EOPS. So EOPS is short for Extended Opportunities, Programs, and Services. This program, which you'll hear a little bit about more, is a statewide retention program, which the fiscal people, the financial aid people, will love to hear why. All right? So we also have culturally relevant or culturally based retention programs. AAAP, or African American Achievement Program. APAS is the same program for our Asian Pacific Islander students. TOLE is a new program, which, when I mean new, just opened in March. And that program focuses on our Filipino students, okay? And LSN, the Latino Services Network, okay? So these are culturally based, and we'll get more into that in a minute. Jeff?
Hi, my name is Jeff Flowers. I'm with College of San Mateo. Our college is south of San Francisco on the peninsula. Here we see, again, the prior picture was of their science center. This is our science center. We're a district comprised of 3 colleges throughout the peninsula, serving 40,000 students annually. The information that I'll be presenting will be about advising services, specifically the movement of these services onto into the online domain. We'll talk about that in the second half of the talk and bring them back together.
Okay.
Briefly, the overview is the first half will be about mentorship and its roles. We'll talk about the problem statement and how new effective strategies can be implemented to increase the effectiveness of these programs, these retention programs. The second half will be on online academic advising tools. We'll talk about, first off, what is academic advising. That's a term that is rife with different interpretations. We'll define it using the National Academic Advising Association's guidelines. And we'll talk about what I think is important about these tools, specifically goal exploration, something that I think a lot of online tools fail to do currently in the current iteration of their programming.
Okay, so what's the problem? Why are we even talking about what we're talking about? Well, the problem is students of color are not having the best completion outcomes at the community college. And so this may be new to you, but it probably isn't. Our students of color are suffering in a disproportionate number because their completion rates are so low. And in California, Nancy Sherlock and Carlene Moore have done an extensive study regarding that pipeline. So if our students of color aren't filling that pipeline, then what is the workforce in California going to be like in the next 15 years, right? So, retention programs. So, what does that mean? How many of you have retention programs on your campus? What does that mean? St. Louis.
I think there's several components to it. As I explained earlier, one of the retention programs is to try and get at-risk. So we have the African American Male Initiative, for example, which is a cohort of African American males that meet together and are mentors. There's mentor-mentee relationship within that. There is early alert systems built into that. So that would be an example of a retention program. And then the other piece I was explaining to you is that by college policy, all students on probation, cumulative GPA drops below 2.0, have to see a counselor to register for their courses. And so that's an aspect of addressing academic distress and trying to retain those students.
Absolutely. And so that brings us to how that incorporates mentorship. So you kind of said it a little bit, and I'm sure on your campuses you have a variation of this. But mentorship is not just mentorship, right? It's not just this thing where you walk in, you're brand new, hey, Joe over here is going to be your mentor. It's not that. It's really a mechanism in which completion can grow, all right? And so we attempt to show that today. So completion defined. So we're defining completion today for our intents and purposes a student who completes a vocational certificate, and at my institution there are over 35 certificated programs, or a student who transferred. That last one is the major piece. So most of our students who are matriculating or are on the matriculation track, they choose to transfer, okay? So the transfer rate we're going to talk about is students of color in particular. So when I talk about students of color, I'm talking about mostly African American and Latino students, okay? Not really separating or not leaving out anyone else. In some cases, Asian American students as well, all right? So here's a transfer report. Now this report comes from our state system. We have a state data system, which we call DataMart. And this project, these numbers are from 2004-2005 school year. And I don't know if you can see that, but that means these students, this percentage of students, completed what we are defining as completion in 3 years. How many of your community colleges are 2-year institutions?
So what's interesting is the way in which they take this data. This is following a cohort. So this is taken 2000, the latest cohort, 2004, 2005, and following them through the next 3 years. These are the values. But now I'm interested. Let's go crazy. It's been 7 years. What happens after 7 years? What do the transfer rates look like?
Ta-da! So we're now in 7 years at your 2-year institution. Okay? So the numbers look wonderful. They look so much better because 9 is now 33%. Yay, us. We're doing it. We're making them complete in 7 years. Okay? So are we retaining them? Absolutely, their butts are in the seats. But are they leaving us? Can we even kick them out? I mean, what's going on? So this has a lot to do with the poor completion rates. Okay? So here are retention programs. Here where we get to the idea of retention. So retention in the short of the long is programs specifically designed to keep a certain group that has been identified in the matriculation process. Okay? A certain group defined in the matriculation process. All right? So the goals: keep that student in the process and see that that student completes. Well, is it 3 years or 7? Well, we just want them to complete, right? Cultural relevancy. So you talked about, say your name again for me, I'm sorry.
Joe.
Joe talked about their retention program for African American males. Absolutely. Culturally relevant retention programs exist on our campuses as well as they should. Why? Because we have to meet our students where they are. And our students come with us, especially in California. Our students come with us with a different amount of need. Language, culture, race, you name it, they're there. All right? So what do I need campus only? Well, Joe's program in St. Louis, and I'm picking on St. Louis because that was the last conversation I had. So St. Louis, they have the program for African American males. Wonderful. And it's called?
The African American Male Initiative. And we also have TRIO that has very good numbers.
Absolutely. I'm going to get to a little lower in a minute. But African American Male Initiative. So some of you probably have that same type of program, but it's not called that. It's probably called something else. So that's what I mean by campus only. A program that does something unique to your campus, right? So TRIO and Puente are really widely disseminated. They're throughout California and Arizona. I see some of you were saying, yeah. Those are what we call standard retention programs. So a standard retention programs mean whoever shows up, right? Whoever. Culturally relevant base, the bird up there is the Sankofa symbol and the APAS symbol down there. So the Sankofa represents our African American students and APAS represents our Asian American students. So those are campus only, specific to that campus, okay? EOPS, how many of you, again, know EOPS? One person, I don't remember. So, again, EOPS is a statewide, California and some other states have picked up EOPS program that is focused on retaining butts in the chair.
Oh, do you by chance know, well, it's in California, I was going to say, what the legislative mandate that created this program, EOPNS and EOP, the Harvard bill and Aliquot. But that would be,
That would be a California thing.
I thought they were going to
So the Hammer Bill in 1960, well, it went to the floor in 68. In 68, it went to the floor because California schools, especially the California State University and the UC systems, were like, well, you know, these students want to come, but we kind of don't know how to get them here. And the bill said, just let them in. Are you serious? Look at their transcripts and admit them. So EOPS or EOP at the university level and EOPS at the community college level is that bridge to say, hey, I can come. Yes, ma'am.
What is it?
Yeah, what is it?
Oh, I'm sorry. Extended Opportunity Program and Services. So EOPS is at the community level. EOP is at the 4-year level. So every school, every 4-year school in California has an EOP program. That's before our budget difficulty. Okay? We have, in California, we have 112 community colleges with various, well, we have 112 community college districts. I'll say that. Because some of our, like Jeff's district is a multi-college district. In those 112 districts, about 96, Jeff?
So, yeah.
96 districts have EOPS. And you say, well, why not all of them? It's expensive to run. It's expensive. Okay? So that's the historical contact is around the civil rights movement. Absolutely. Those students in 1969 at Terranceville State, they burned the place down. Hey, let us in, let us do. Those African American, those Latino students got together and eventually were heard and EOPS came about. So the current form, again, the people in financial aid would appreciate this. The current form serves to keep students there who have mostly, not only, mostly a financial need. Okay? So that's, again, who it serves. So here's the mission. And you can read it, I won't go into it. But the idea that enrollment, retention, and transfer are these big deals for EOPS, right? So EOPS says, well, we're going to get them in, we're going to keep them enrolled, and we're going to get them out. Really? Like how long? They didn't say that part. So, again, all these other things are a factor. So you know your students come in with social difficulties, academic difficulties, family background, culture, all those things. So EOPS wants to address those. So here's who is in EOPS. Of course, California resident, full-time enrollment. At our institution, full-time is 12 units. Now, with most community colleges, and I'm sure it mimics yours a little bit, our students are not the traditional college freshmen. Some of our students, a lot of our students have families, have other jobs, have other responsibilities. So that full-time piece is a little difficult to navigate, okay? Not have completed 70-degree units. Again, that's easy to do at the community college when you add in basic skills, or I don't know if you all call them remedial or beginner or those developmental. Okay, so at our institution it's basic skills. All right, low income as determined by the Board of Governors. This piece is important because it goes to financial aid. We have what we call a BOG waiver. Now, if you qualify for a BOG waiver, then you automatically qualify for EOPS.
And now BOG is Board of Governors.
Yeah. Okay, so it's directly linked to the financial aid and the fiscal piece. All right, and disadvantaged education. All right. Question 1. So, sir, what's your name? Daryl. Can you join those ladies right there? They need a man at their table. So here's where we're going to do a modified gallery walk. I like to do a gallery walk in my classroom, and it just gets my students up and not fall asleep and bored and looking at me crazy. So what we're going to do is, perfect. These 2 tables here, you're going to go either one, because we thought it was going to be more. So either one of these walls, and you're going to address question 1. And these 2 tables, you can come here and address question 1. So question 1 says, how does your institution understand the role of retention? So what you're going to do is, For 5 minutes as a group, you're going to look at question 1 and you're going to throw out some things and address some stuff and put it up on the board, right? Both groups. And then you're going to come back and we're going to share out.
So the first person looking at your table will be the captain. I don't know who that was, but the markers are on the table. If you need more markers, we have plenty. And so if I can direct everyone.
Now,
Could you repeat
we have to get up.
Oh, we're
explain the question a little bit more?
Oh, the questions are.
The questions are on the board, so it's question 1, so you just flip it down. And so you just discuss whichever one you want to do. These 2 tables have options. So we want you to kind of think about it as a group. Yeah, just flip it down. All right? So just kind of think about it in terms of where your institution is and what you're doing. Just kind of, talk to each other.
And here are the pens for anyone who has excellent penmanship. Anyone?
Just bullets. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be this long essay. But, just bullets. Like, what are you doing or how do you address this?
I think the one who holds it is
Talk to each other. Okay.
well, I don't know who else is with me, but we understand that we have a retention problem, but we are just trying to figure out what to do about it. So we understand we need one. That's where we are.
Awareness.
Yeah, awareness.
Yeah, well, I'm just with St. Louis too, and we have, like Joe was talking about, we have the AAMI, we have American Male Initiative, we have TRIO, we have Gateway to College, which I don't know if anyone's familiar, we have a Gateway to College program. We're trying to establish a mentorship for the entire college, which is not, it's not well established yet.
Trying to do what for the whole
A
time?
mentorship of all faculty and staff for mentor students. And we've done it. Michael was community college. Yeah. It was kind of voluntary trial this semester, and I wasn't very successful with it. The people that I tried to mentor, I didn't know exactly why. We're trying to work on it, but eventually, that's a goal for every faculty and staff to have at least 1 or 2 mentees.
That's what we're trying to do.
That's what we're trying to do. And we're wondering the voluntary thing will work too, so that's what I'm curious to hear what they.
That's an interesting idea. The first thing that I'm thinking about, though, is having all staff do it greatly increases the number of people you have. Is it all staff, like even those who don't have degrees, like our maintenance?
No, I shouldn't say professional staff and
Professional
faculty.
staff.
Mesa Community College here is starting to do the same thing, but I think it's open to anybody. I mean, the fact that you don't have a degree doesn't mean that you
Yeah.
can't help somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an interesting question when you think about helping them achieve academics.
And we're
Well, but I mean, they could be better at math. Trust me, our gardeners know how to do math better than all of us probably.
Geometry.
Yeah, exactly.
we're
So,
implementation.
but yeah, it's going to be the same concept, faculty and staff. But they're targeting a specific group of students, and then we also have the Phi Theta Kappa students
Yes, we
who are
have.
mentoring other Phi Theta Kappa students so that they can stay in school as well. Obviously, there's issues not academic, it's other issues that are causing them drop out. So
We have peer mentoring too.
Another cool idea about getting all staff to do it is that really fits into the learning college idea. That means everybody and everything at this institution is about helping students. I love the idea of all staff doing that.
Well, to me, when I think about programs like this, I think of 2 things. One is that, there's a lot of research out there that shows that students are more likely to be retained if they feel they have at least one advocate on campus. That advocate can be anybody, going back to what you were just saying. It could be a fellow student, it could be a groundskeeper, it can be a teacher, anyone. And so that these kind of programs are simply a way of establishing at a minimum one mentor for a certain group of students. And then the second facet that I always think about with these types of programs is the old TV show, A Different World, that college is its own country, so to speak. And what we were seeing on the videos this morning,
Very telling.
I'm in a strange land with strange people. I don't understand what these folks are talking about. Is that's why we do a lot of these programs that group like individuals together so that we can say we're taking you from this world into our world. And our world's the same regardless of what group you are, but if I came from, I'm going to say North Carolina, it's different for me than if you come from California, so to speak. So that's the interesting facet of these types of programs is one, we've created that at least one individual, and actually in the ultimate Treisman's research for the math students, you've created not just the mentor who runs the program, but all their fellow peers, because it is group supported. So I don't have just one mentor if I'm a high-risk student. I've got 20, 30, 40, 50. And then they can always interpret, because it's sometimes them when you're sitting in the room, they go, I don't understand why I have to show up for class every day, that some of their fellows who come from the world they've come from can go, man, you can't learn if you're not there. You missed the other day and we learned this, and what are you going to do about
also
that?
calling each other saying, hey, why didn't you show up?
That's right.
And, now you kind of feel committed and you have to be there.
Peer pressure
You
is
guys
still
also
strong.
have the leadership program at Paradise Valley. It's a peer-to-peer, but it's part of a leadership program.
About one more minute to have this conversation.
And the students earn credit towards a certificate of leadership. So it's really all it's doing is going on their transcript and for their resumes and
But actually,
stuff.
students who are part of that, we pair them up with one of our peer mentors, which kind of guides you not only in the leadership opportunities, but also making sure that how they are academically, are they really overwhelmed with all the stuff that they're being involved and so forth. So that's been really beneficial. Eventually, we're targeting to have a transcript.
Right.
Mine for leadership, I'm in career services, so anything that's going to then equate
And that's part of it.
employment work skills.
And our mentors are from the different areas, career services, advising. Our president has, even volunteers to do that. So
Is it open only for students of color or for anybody?
this is for everybody.
Yeah, because I'm from Canada, so we don't have like any specific program for students of color. We have especially a program for Native students, like they have like a lot of support, but
Okay,
we don't have
let's
like
wrap this piece up and be
Service learning
prepared to
programs.
report out.
That's an interesting shift for me, because we have students of color, but we also have other disadvantages. Very poor people with come from and no one in their family has a degree. They're at risk too. and they
first
need-
generation. Yeah. We have that like first generation students.
All right, let's get ready to report out.
Information, yeah.
Yeah,
It's been very successful.
Welcome to stay in the
They're at Paradise Valley.
It's up to you.
They have a really
We have everything now on that, how we get people and how we give the different.
So however you do it, I want to work.
Looks like there's some really great discussions. I know that the group that I shared in really has some great ideas. And I'm so sorry I didn't get your name. Came in. Yes. Maria. I think what Maria was talking about is something that really comes to the heart of the matter. And if you could share with us the idea of disconnect, the concept of a disconnect between programs that are targeting students of color at the institutional level versus those that are not.
Well, when I was answering the question, I said this: if we listed all the programs that will address retention for students of color, I said then you were answering the question, how does our institution understand retention? We understand it programmatically.
Okay.
What I would ask is, do our institutions understand it strategically?
Okay. That's a very good question, because I think when we begin to tease that out, we then come up with other strategies. Like I think this one says the trio or men of color, those are particular strategies. If we tease out who we're trying to retain, that's what we're talking about. And then also what we're talking about here. What are strategic measures, even inside of our programs, to keep those students retained or to keep those students interested in our programmatic piece? Because we can name programs from now on. We have about another 45 minutes, and I bet you the whole 45 minutes we can name program after program after program after program. But are they working? right? So, again, that's a great actual phenomenon. Does your institution understand it programmatically or strategically? Very good.
And I see that we have a lot to do with high school integration, that is bridging between these two institutions. I see the high school bridge, the GTC, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation grant is also a bridge for high school. I can't read that far, I'm sure.
Gateway to college.
Gateway to college.
Which we have on, it's actually called Gateway to College at our institution as well.
We see these interlinking parts, pieces between these institutions that are trying to act as a bridge and to address this retention issue.
And I also heard in this group, you are all talking about a Greek letter society?
Yes.
Who was that? The lady that was sitting there. She said.
Phi Theta Kappa.
Phi Theta Kappa. And what type of Greek letter society is that?
It's an honors society for community college students. So
Okay.
they're doing some peer mentoring.
Okay.
Mesa.
Okay, cool. All right. So again, is your institution really, really understanding that retention for students of color is important? Okay, so I was, you're from?
I'm from Wilkes County, North Carolina.
North Carolina. And so I was with that group and I heard him say, well, we're a PWI or a predominantly white institution. So we don't have very many students of color. So what does that mean? Well, it means the students still need to be retained. Students of all colors, national origins, background, races are suffering from attrition. However, if you want your campus to not be predominantly white or to integrate more students of color, what would that mean for you? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but what would that mean? What would that mean for him? We can help him. What would that mean?
It would mean for us, when way outside of our local area, to pull students in, to recruit somehow.
Okay.
You know, we have to go south to Charlotte or maybe east to Winston-Salem because we're a rural section of North Carolina and there's just very few minorities in our section. We have, Hispanic, increasing Latino, and African American some, but it's still very small. We're talking 2% African American and maybe 5% Hispanic. The rest is white.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so, we would have to recruit. We would have to go far south, far east.
And that's physically and fiscally impossible, or?
Probably fiscally impossible.
It goes back to our numbers. Yes, ma'am?
Just a general question, I'm sure we can discuss forever, but it's almost like self-segregation by color working for institutions, or is it better to kind of divide groups as we kind of mentioned, like about first generation college students, and kind of group it by, not by race, but by their different experiences they have, their socioeconomic issues, and their goals in life. I'm just wondering if people have better experience, like,
If we go that direction, then, we're predominantly first generation.
Absolutely.
So I don't know if people's experience generally felt like by color works better, or by life experiences and life goals as a better approach.
Well, I think I'm sorry, go ahead. You want to answer?
I'm saying, that is one thing we are doing.
Yeah.
We have a big adult learner
Yeah,
push,
like another group, yeah.
non-traditional students, and we have a whole service center for non-traditional students, so that's another whole category.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so when we talk about retention, we talk about all of that.
Yeah.
So all of those things are retention issues, right? So even at your institution, retention is an issue. Even in at Joe's school, which I think he said 55% African American.
Yeah, we're playing with that number. Yeah.
Okay.
Well above 50%.
Right.
Yeah, maybe even 60.
It's 60.
I thought that was down generally.
Okay. All right. So 50, 55, 60 versus. Okay. Right. And so.
1.5.
And the idea, though, is that retention is an issue with our students. Why more than ever? Well, because the financial climate is changing. And so, to answer your question, at my institution, we address all of that. But it just so happens that because we're in the bright light big city, San Francisco, we can address that this way. So even if we have first generation, right, they may be all students of color. Even if we have low socioeconomic, they may be all students of color. Our reentry students may be students of color. So it depends on your institution, absolutely. But should we not address those in those ways? Absolutely we should. We have a huge student reentry population. On my campus, and we only figured out a few. On my campus, we have 10 specific retention programs. Everything you all talk about addresses one of those issues. We have a program called Second Chance. Second Chance is for incarcerated individuals coming out of prison. So hit a demographic, we have it. So the issue though is it working? What's working? What's not working? How are we addressing this? So all these programs are fabulous. Any more share-outs from your group discussion? This was pretty good.
I think it's important to just be able to, everybody's got a different demographic and everybody's demographic changes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really about wanting to understand who they are.
Yeah.
And then addressing their needs.
Absolutely.
Regardless of who they are.
Well,
I mean,
yes and no.
because if you understand them, then you're going to try and meet the needs.
And that's where the mentorship comes in, right? Because if I just walk onto the campus in North Carolina, I probably don't have a specific service to help me, but I'm sure they're going to help me. But would I feel better if somebody that maybe looked like me could help me? Absolutely. Absolutely. And so we're not saying resegregate college, because colleges in their culture of college segregate themselves. So we're not saying that that's invalid, but at the same time, what do we do about that transfer thing? Because remember, we talked about completion. So what do we do about that transfer thing? So we have all these students, all these different populations. How do we get them going? What is that like? What do we do? Well, transfer gap is what we want to talk about next. A transfer gap, according to Ben Simone et al., is the gap between students who actually transfer and those who are eligible to transfer. Now, the eligibility and the actual goes back to what you just said about that, who cares for them, who's helping them, who's guiding them, who's mentoring them. Okay? So here we have these numbers by race. This gap is huge. This gap is huge. This is statewide, it's California statewide information. That means students who are eligible don't. Why? Do they know how? Has anyone told them they could? What is counseling or what is advising saying? What's happening? Yeah.
I have a question. When you're saying, and you tried to define it earlier, but when you're saying transfer, are you saying that like they completed an associate degree in
No, completely.
studies? Or at what point are you saying transfer?
Well, when we talk, first of all, as I'm talking about completion today, we're talking about transfer, degree completion, and certificate completion. But when we're talking about transfer, means that they are ready to now go to the four-year institution.
At what point?
When they are ready to go. So whatever your rules at your institution is, that's what that means. So at your institution, it means
They completed the core.
completed the course. So at our institution, it's completed the GE, it's completed, you're at college transfer level, math, English, science, you have 90 units, whatever. So whatever that is at your institution. So transfer ready.
In North Carolina, that's defined through the articulation agreement with the four-year.
Oh, articulation, that's a whole nother workshop.
That is,
Yeah, that's a whole nother workshop. Because in California, articulation is so hard. Because we have so many schools and so many institutions. We're actually working on that now. But anyway, so this is the gap in California. So you think, what does this mean? So this down here means these students completed their general requirements. They got to transfer level math and English, and they're on their way to San Francisco State or Berkeley or wherever. These students were also eligible. What happened to them? Did they fall through the cracks at counseling, or did anyone just say, well, we don't know, or did they not show up? What happened? Right? So here's the challenge. How do we get that gap? How do we remove it? How do we end it? How do we close it? What do we do? How do we get the students from classroom to graduation or transfer? Completion. How do we do that? So why does this gap matter? You all? Why does this gap matter? Why are we even talking about this?
North Carolina is part of our critical success factors.
Critical success factors, absolutely. Anything else?
So we see more and more accountability measures being put in place that use this metric with which to gauge success of the program.
Okay. Anything else? Why does this gap matter?
systemically, it's going to affect the society of the future. I mean, you know.
Absolutely. The pipeline, yes.
That's a teaching agenda, I was just thinking, a teaching agenda.
Okay.
Trying to graduate whole world and see where we're at. Sometimes we don't know if community colleges, they've had their vote, but we don't know that, we don't count that sometimes.
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
In Texas, right now the legislature is in session, so it's kind of feisty, but they're wanting to implement part of our budget that we receive from the state tied to momentum points, and the momentum points are based on transfer credits.
It could almost be called pressure points.
Yeah, like dollars.
Yeah. Okay, yes, ma'am.
For me, for the students I mentor, the biggest thing is, it matters to me is because they're so full of potential, yet they're not going to realize that potential. So I think that's where it matters a lot. They work so hard in the 2 years to get to that point, yet they're not realizing it.
Absolutely. And that's where minding the gap comes in. It's up to that particular piece in mentorship that says, hey, 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 you got this, you can go. Let's make this happen for you. What does that mean, right? So transfer outcomes. Again, San Francisco, and I'm going to kind of go quickly because we need to get to our second question and Jeff's piece. So transfer outcomes. This is statewide California. Statewide, this is who transferred. So you say, oh, okay, mediocre, but all right, that's cool. This is who transfers, the students who transferred that are part of EOPS. That is our statewide retention program. So you're saying, okay, I thought you just said earlier that retention was the way to go. Here it seems like it's not. What are you trying to say? Well, what I'm trying to say is EOPS is a wonderful program. Wonderful program. Love EOPS. EOPS does not have a cultural relevant piece. Okay? EOPS addresses financial need mostly. So effective strategies. Your other retention programs, you listed them. You talked about them. We talked about our campus only. Those are other, effective strategies. Yes, ma'am.
I thought you said the OPS was born of the civil rights movement.
Absolutely.
There's
So
no
it is
cultural relevancy in there?
No, in its current iteration has gone from providing services to now just providing cash.
Did it initially?
Nope.
No?
No, it was never a culturally based program. It addressed the need or the lack thereof of students of color. It never addressed their cultural need. It just addressed this what we look like.
Initially, it did provide more counseling services, higher end counseling, and has since, because of cuts, just come down because it's a more expensive route to just providing vouchers in most cases.
Yeah. So it was never intended to be a culturally relevant program. Okay?
So really what you're saying was the assumption of the barrier to college was financial.
Absolutely.
Solely, nothing, no other factor.
Well, initially, I would say that it initially was believed that people needed more help to get into and get a college mindset or college culture infused, and has since become purely economic.
Because it was based on race. It wasn't based on race and culture. The number said there are no Black and Latino students in college, let's get them there. Period. It didn't have anything to do with those people and their backgrounds and their cultural lives. It's just, we don't have them in college, what are we going to do? EOPS. Okay? Yeah? No?
Some other programs, retention programs have been talked about. Supplemental instruction is also used at a lot of colleges. This is, I see a lot of folks know about this, particularly it's anyone from Kansas, the birthplace of this. But the idea is using peer tutors. These are students, effectively students or tutors that mirror or shadow class and then provide extra tutoring afterwards. That's another strategy that's been proven to be effective in helping students matriculate. There's also been a lot of talk. I won't talk much about this because I've seen a lot of talks around here about learning communities. But of course, we know that these cost a lot to do right. One could argue this is a slightly cheaper option, but again, nevertheless, effective strategies, pros and cons for both.
Okay. And mentorship. Why we're even here, right? So we think that mentorship is not only an effective strategy, but can be done at a reduced cost. And that's what we're all talking about lately, well, especially in California. You know, our governor is on a hot seat right now. We're trying to pass the budget, okay? So free is always good. And so mentorship, for our intents and purposes, has the largest potential to produce the most effective completion rates for those students, okay? So what do we need? You all said that. You all in your campuses and all in your programs, we have peer, group, and faculty, student. I think you said you are a mentor. Yes. And so PWI versus MSI. So
what are these acronyms?
Anybody know?
Yeah, PWI cost. I don't know why, what's MSI?
MSI, anybody?
Minority serving.
Minority serving institution. So predominantly white institution versus minority serving institution. What's the difference? Well, a minority serving institution is that institution that specifically says they're going to serve that population. And so we have three main ones. So we have HBCU, we have HSI, am I right? Yes. And TCU, right? The Tribal Council.
Tribal colleges.
Tribal Council, colleges and universities. Thank you very much. Okay, so I want to focus on HBCU. Anybody alone? HBCU? No? Okay, me neither. I didn't have the money. All HBCUs are private institutions. Okay? And so the idea of HBCU is that these things, mentorship, culture, structure, and community, are embedded in the actual grains, mission, and purpose of those institutions. The same with the tribal colleges and the Hispanic serving institutions, same thing. When you hit the door, these things are already given to you. When you hit the door, and they're based in culture. Okay? So I listed a few for you. Howard University is probably the most famous of those HBCUs. Morehouse College, all men. Martin Luther King attended there. Spelman College, all women. Okay? And the other institutions. But these are undergraduate rates. So you say, okay, so it's not 100%, so why are you so excited? Well, these programs get these numbers without even trying. And what I mean by not trying, we don't have these programs embedded in the curriculum at HBCU. But this is the main piece. So I'm going back to the cultural relevant mentorship. It works. It works. It does. We see that. Okay? So here's some of the literature, what they say. Tinto, Lee, Zamani, they talk all about how retention should go to the next level. Tinto does a gamut of stuff on retention. But he says in this piece, so now what? What do we do? So we talked about retention, the cows come home. You've talked about academic, you talked about social, now what? What do we do? Well, you kind of start saying it. Okay? All right? So why? Why? Why does this even matter? Why does mentorship culturally relevantly matter? Well, some of you all said this. When students feel supported, they perform better, right? When they feel like they have an advocate, I heard that somewhere, somebody said the gardener, even if it was the gardener. If they feel like they have someone that they can go to, they perform better. Absolutely. All right? Retention rates for students of color have fallen since the creation of the OPS, and I think we kind of touched on that. The public and community college cultural shifts? No?
Oh.
No? Okay. All right. So again, correct mentorship builds trust. What does correct mean? Well, the studies have shown that when mentors go into mentorship relationships and they talk down to their students, that's incorrect. You can't go into a relationship and say, well, you know you don't know how to do this, and this is bad, and I'm going to fix it, and you, that's not a correct mentorship relationship. Okay?
Hi, this will be the next part. We're going to be talking about my half about the idea of high quality academic advising services and moving this to an online domain. So first off, we're both instructors. That much I'm sure is apparent in our style and how we like to present. And so this came about through my discussions with students, and I realized that there seemed to be a problem developing, a challenge, out of diminished access to high-quality academic advising services. And I'm sure this is all throughout your institutions as well. So I think for the interest of time, instead of going up to the boards, we might, well, no, we have time. Let's just do it. Let's do number question 2 and start this off. The second question will be, how the organization rising to the challenge of offering this mission-critical service in the current fiscal times. This is something that I'm sure a lot of us are grappling with. I know at my institution, the idea of online seems to be a cost-effective strategy. What are other institutions doing? What other services or types of services?
Okay.
So, good.
Is it online stuff or other?
This is the academic advising. I'm sure there's been discussions about how to offer these services more efficiently or more cost effectively. It doesn't have to be online. In fact, it could be.
So say that. Because he's going to get to it, but I want you to really make that clear. How
So we've done one thing, probably everybody else already has this, but we just created a new position, director of advising. So for the first time, we actually have somebody whose full-time job is to make sure we're doing advising. It's actually a big step for us.
Where are you?
So what's that mean?
Cambridge College in Georgia.
Yeah, we've reduced lunch for some time.
Well,
We're a fairly small school, so that's why.
Or like basically taxing time on people who's already there. Like not compensating, but just having like faculty members
Just say, here you go. In addition to your plate, here's another plate.
Yeah, exactly. No, not because of the fiscal time. Just that's one way that.
Just,
Yeah.
it seems like that's a corporate approach.
We have an online advisor on our campus that is for questions. And that's worked really well for the students who, again, have a quick question. Otherwise, they'll tell them no, for that you have to come in because you don't want thorough or whatever. But it answers the question, I guess, faster instead of them having to come for an appointment and wait and
Is this an email system or a chat-based system?
I think it was, well, I think both. I think it started as online email, and now it's become a chat room as well. I'm not sure now if they've gone away with one or the other, but I know it started as a email and then.
Is the academic advising go without knowing the.
Again, it depends on the questions. Of course, once it became like it depends, if something quick could be answered that way, otherwise, again, they would be advised to come in to actually set an appointment.
There's definitely a lot of research on that, trying to answer that question as to what level of need can be answered. And for students that already have an understanding, already have the background, this type of asynchronous communication is possible. Also, when you create meeting or have a meeting, first check, etc., that is proven not to be so effective. So there definitely is a spectrum to be aware of.
And they become more question and advising rather than true mentorship. Like these things are now mentorship.
Although with our nursing advisor, because we have a nursing advisor, and she has more like a chat. And actually, she for her it's worked well because she is so bombarded with students. And this way, again, it was a quick question on like, would this be a prerequisite or when you have the next, whatever the case may be. And she likes it because it gives a quick, to the point kind of questions, and then she can get away from not having to see. It's not a person.
At our college, we use PeopleSoft, so students are able to log into their student center and actually pick a degree plan they want to go through, and it will pull up the advising sheet of what they have already our state degree. So that's something they can utilize themselves in the system, is to put in the degree program, and it'll pull what other classes they need for that degree. It's kind of like a self-service tool.
That's wonderful, actually. Anyone else having any of this software? Degree Works is one of them.
And if they work, we're about to. We're about to deploy Degree Works as well.
What college are you?
EMCC.
We have our.
Oh, here.
On there it says as.
We have, I'm not sure the academic advising, but they're doing some like small group, like.
Okay, maybe about 2 more minutes, you all, maybe about 2 more minutes, and
laptops
then we can
and
turn
try
back
to
and
work
report out.
Well, that especially works in many lockstep-like programs. A lot of the allied health, you know, an instructor in a class can have everybody in that class and say, okay, your second semester medical assisting, third semester, sign up for these courses. There's no option. So, you know, you don't need to see anyone individually. You just go online and type them in and you're there. We're exploring now looking at peer advisors, you know, because I'm thinking of the fiscal times part of it, and requiring various clubs or groups like the Phi Beta Kappa that was being discussed of giving service to be peer advisors for students in certain groupings.
Sounds good, but what do you do when the student says my peer advisor told me to take the wrong class?
Well, would not be the last step in the process. It's just some conversations of, you know, we'll hear some program things, and you know, those peer advisors, we're not there yet, but you know, could be trained. The biggest problem we have is we're a relatively small college, so in our career technologies programs, some courses only get offered once a year or once every 2 years. So if you miss that bus, it's kind of like last night with the shuttles, is when you miss it, you're worried when they're coming back or if at all. So, you know, we could give them that information, and again, what we find, and we heard this morning, well, most of the students say they get advised by their peers. Well, if they're going to be advised by their peers anyway, maybe we need to identify a group of those peers and train them, so then if they're going to listen to them when they don't listen to the faculty anyway, maybe at least it's a starting point, but not an ending point. I would not want it to be the final.
I think it could be used like initially, you know, when the first, you know, the first come, like we're doing our campus orientation or advisement sessions are in groups now, where they do come to the computer lab, teach them how to use their
So it's like that's the first 2
center.
weeks, the first 2 weeks of enrollment, like the very first
Actually,
part?
it's throughout.
Before the semester. So before the semester, and then in the first 2 weeks of classes, or just before? Oh, okay. Oh, good. Cool.
Okay, about 30 more seconds, and then we can prepare to report out.
In answer to your question, like the Phi Theta Kappa program at Mesa, they actually did a first semester orientation or first year orientation for Phi Theta Kappa. So the students went through regular orientation, and then they did, as the students would say, the real orientation from a student's perspective, and gave them names of individuals that they could contact if they ran into an issue with financial aid, or you know, classes like that that are only once a year. So it was interesting how they, and the students developed the orientation from their experience.
One thing I want to highlight is this idea of very software packages that are out there. There's a number of software packages. I'm sure somebody.
That's been our sticking point with mandating faculty coming off contract during teacher registration. There was this young lady here that talked about the idea of there was a credit hour attached to it, or some kind of monetary system. I don't know if it's a full credit hour, because that's quite a bit. But I think that's the part that would be the only hope of getting faculty to class or to advise.
And then here in Arizona, Chris was mentioning that they just do it.
But I think I'm hearing the move towards, or the attempt at least, going to online to do these cost-saving measures. So, first off, it sounds like I can go a little bit quicker on some of these slides. I think we understand what academic advising is. And the term that I'm going to be using, again, comes out of the National Academic Advising Association. A lot has been written about the subject, and the modern definition coming from Terry O'Banion and Crogston, that were mentioned in yesterday's talk as well, is the idea that there is an advisor-advisee relationship in which there is a co-creation or negotiation for a goal and producing the plan to implement and achieve that goal. advising, and outcomes. And for every $500 decrease spent, there was a measurable decrease in student success. And so the linkage has been empirically observed, and we understand that this service is rather important, and high-quality services are really important. Something that will come back repeatedly. What do they do? Well, we talked about some of here, and we'll see a great deal. Prevention monitoring, effectively. So we're going to see what is it, what are their responsibilities, their core responsibilities. These are numbers taken out of Status of Academic Advising, another publication, a survey that's sent out to academic advisors throughout the country about every 5 years. This is from 2004. The latest one is going to be coming out in a year from now. What we see the core responsibilities, there was some talk over here I heard about evaluation of transcripts. So we know this is general ed, advising records, transcripts, and orientation programs. All of these are some of the most important components of the service. So who's the audience? Who's the audience of this service? Here we see, again, numbers taken from the Status of Academic Advising. We know that the transfer students, adult, part-time, undecided, at-risk students are all using the service and are benefiting from the service. So how do we measure this service? And I think this is an interesting metric that has recently come about, the concept of the advisor load. And the advisor load, as simply stated, is a ratio between advisees and advisors. Here we see 2-year public institutions, the recommended advisor load being 300. We see that number is well above. Now, again, these numbers are from 2004.
I heard Texas say something like 900. Did you say?
Yeah, it all depends during peak registration hours.
Okay.
Mine is 1,500 to 2,000.
These are not absurd. The numbers have skyrocketed. Numbers coming out of USCD, the 4-year private. Here we see the number hovering about below 300. Recent numbers from fall 2004 to fall 2009 now resides at 827. So these numbers are only increasing geometrically. Well, maybe not geometrically. They're increasing catastrophically. They're increasing quite a bit. So I think that there are opportunities here. And we're all talking about, at some point, technological opportunities to try to assist these individuals with their functions and to try to keep these numbers manageable, or at the very least, still provide high-quality services at these absurd numbers at advisor loads. Well, I thought it was rather interesting. One of the core findings from the latest survey was this statement: the technological revolution has not yet consistently reached advising systems. And I think that's a powerful statement, because right now we're looking towards these ideas, these technological systems, to help these advising systems. And so there's a disconnect. I don't have to tell anyone why these are being sold to us so heavily. The idea of the amount of sessions per year, the typical model of 20 minutes face-to-face. At the extreme, these are extreme numbers. This is an advisor that was only advising 8 hours, 174 days a year, 20 minutes, no dead time, maybe not even lunch. But nevertheless, what people are telling us is we decrease that number. The number actually does not increase linearly, but polynomially, and therefore we start getting scale efficiencies quite rapidly. So we can shrink down the time, it is believed, we can increase the efficiency, the number of people you see, and still maintain high advisor load while still providing high quality advising services. So that's what's being sold to everyone when they purchase these systems from a number of different software sites. So what are some of the technologies currently used? Again, these numbers are from the 2004 survey. We see online registration high. I'm sure all of these numbers have increased, maybe not telephone, but we see the increase of reliance upon a degree audit. I know that California has a number of different degree audit systems in place. Again, one thing that minor in computer information sciences, and my majors were chemistry and math. What I always liked about in computer science was this poster. I forget where it was. It was in a lab. The idea was standards. You gotta love them. There's so many to pick from. And so with all these systems, degree awesome, there's so many to pick from. So obviously this is something that people think important, but why are there so many? Why do we even need so many?
How many of you at your campus, your advising and or your counseling departments have the capability to share with each other?
Like
information.
Collaboration.
Like electronically or computer-wise? Yeah?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if you're, I'm not really sure. We have access, we use banners, we have access to the same banner forms, and I can call someone over advising and say, hey, look, what's happening with this student, or they can call us and say, hey, we need this hold lifted for this student.
Okay.
Both of our offices have telephones.
Okay. Imagine that, a phone. What? A phone? Okay, okay, good. So, in terms of record access, though, so banner and some other things.
So they're
Yeah, we have PeopleSoft.
PeopleSoft, okay.
And I work in the financial office, so I get to see a lot of the progress and grades. We have.
Okay.
These information management systems are coming of age. Other industries have also used them for quite some time, but I think it's interesting that we are finally transitioning into these systems. I think I was remembering very quickly, I have no time, a TED argument, or a TED program about the 21st century will be defined by our user interface. And banner, etc., are all frameworks. It's how we map on top of that user interface to get access to data that makes it meaningful. And so we're talking about how to make these systems meaningful, these online systems. So this all came about. I'm an instructor. I teach chemistry. Was just talking to my students and had the question, well, what does this service look like now, today, at my institution? And I was very surprised to hear that the service was not looked at very well. And so I thought, well, how can I take this heuristic of people telling me, this is da-da-da. Because what was interesting was when I asked them to do, to fill out a survey, I realized that their service delivery followed a uniform distribution, which is odd because I was thinking if you had a bad service delivery, it should be more of a normal or Gaussian distribution. But it's not uniform, so that was very peculiar. So I thought, well, let's delve in deeper. And for doing that, I used and came upon the academic advice and inventory, developed a device that basically, anyone who ever uses tool, it's a rather interesting tool. The most difficult component is the questions are discrete questions with continuum overlap. It's a validated tool, but a very difficult tool to understand. So the first challenge was to get this tool into an online measure, put that in SurveyMonkey, thought about it for a while, and thought if I were to take this long survey, and I was doing this a friendly thing, I might just pick the first discrete question and just go right down and be done with it. I remember high school was me doing that all day long. So, as a scientist, to eliminate these kinds of errors, I immediately said, okay, we've got to randomize the questions while still keeping the weights so that over time, large numbers, that would be eliminated, any kind of error. I was very pleasantly surprised that that was not a challenge I needed to address. The questions looked as though students actually put the time in. So we'll talk about the surveys real quickly. About 276 attempted, not all completed the entire survey, it's rather a long one. And we tried to mirror the student body. Here we have gender. Again, gender not so good. But I was happy to see, with regard to ethnicity, that the survey participants did in fact look like the school that I'm at. Here, this is data across ethnicity for the latest cohort. So very briefly, what did the data tell me? It told me on the continuum, here, this again spread out across gender and ethnicity. Here's an aggregate. The numbers were skirting the line between prescriptive versus developmental advising. They were getting a very prescriptive approach to this service. The modern academic advising has realized that there intrinsic ownership in prescriptive advising. And so there's great failures associated with that model. A developmental approach, one in which there's co-creation and generation of goals, being a much better route. They were not getting that in my institution. There's a lot of numbers. Let's just skip to this. I think this one was the best wrap up of the entire survey. This is a beautiful quote that when I saw that, I said, I'm using that one going forward. It was astrologically bad, which I'm sure is much better, much worse than astronomically. This one implies that the divine divinity is acting part. So, global problem. My school is going towards various software package to help students develop student educational plans. Very well-known software I don't want to talk about, but there's obviously a service fit disconnect. The problem has roots in the desire for efficiency. Well, okay, so we're going to take a system that currently doesn't work and then programmatically put it online. And I think the definition of insanity is doing the exact same thing and hoping you get a different response. I think what we have to fall back upon is to go and use a developmental lens, going back to the basics of academic advising, and program into these systems a developmental lens with which to first create a goal. All these systems that I've seen numerous ones, unless the student comes in with a goal, singular goal. A lot of these systems, if you really push them hard, you'll realize that if a student comes in without a goal, with multiple goals, there's a huge problem with using the software. It fails miserably because the software has been programmed to be very prescriptive, command-driven. It's just programmatic, algorithmic idea. More modern software ideas use, that's when you go to, let's say, Amazon, buy a book. There's actually the idea of some intelligence that pattern recognizes and realizes, oh, you probably like this book. There is no this book, then buy this book, then buy this book. And so, unfortunately, these systems follow algorithmic logic. How to combat that demand or to think about putting a developmental lens into the program. So briefly, a developmental approach is this idea you have both energy and commitment, finite resources, this being from both Aston and Tinto. This idea that you have these finite resources that anyone has. We only have so much energy to commit to these various goals. And the ultimate behavior, of course, is that of success, of matriculation. So the idea of what I'm doing is looking at various algorithms to put this developmental lens within the program itself, to integrate these various important pieces into the systems. Porting the current systems over in the current iteration is not going to work. They don't work right now. And you will not gain the efficiencies sought after. So we're using this idea of this platform of Dickeny to build this in. The idea of having various components of academic advising built into the software, those concepts being immediacy, co-creation, the generation of a goal into the system to then create a roadmap and have multiple roadmaps. Instead of coming with a goal, it first helps develop that goal, that first initial step, to then produce the ultimate student educational plan. So it's this idea of putting these developmental ideas back into the basic systems themselves and making it highly interactive. I hear a lot of systems don't communicate well unless you have two phones. They don't talk very well to one another. There's lack of interactivity and integration. And so the concept of Dickeny is to use a more artificial intelligence approach to try to build in this idea of engaging the student, and this is what the entire program is about today, student engagement, giving them the engagement with which to then develop that goal. So we have seen quite a bit today. We've talked about first the effectiveness and showing how this idea of mentorship, how we could have been showstopper, is showing how we can use this idea of mentorship to create a more effective program. Programs that we already exist, infusing it with mentorship to yield more effective at giving our students the ability to transfer out. We'll see the flip side of that coin very briefly about the idea of increasing the efficiencies of these pre-existing systems or these oncoming systems with which to provide these tools. Again, I believe that efficiency begets access, and it's access that gives students a real chance at coming in and succeeding later, and providing that tool is critical.
So we don't have time for our third question, but thank you so very much for being patient with us. We've gone over time, although we have a little bit more time before lunch, so I didn't impede on your lunch. So again, we hope that you have gotten something to take away, to take back to your institution, maybe a little, maybe a lot, maybe at your table. Please exchange information with the people at your table, business cards, whatever, because I think this type of sharing really improves our campuses. I'm going to take back stuff from the people in Arizona, Missouri, North Carolina, South Carolina, North Carolina, right? North Carolina, Texas. I'm taking things back because, again, what we are trying to do is increase completion rates, the end. So whether it's wonderful online advising, whether it's putting mentorship where it doesn't exist, whatever the case is, we need to get our students engaged and on their way. Thank you very much. So if you don't have please do your books.
Yes.
I am born and raised in San Francisco. Is it really? Really? Do you know? I'm desperately trying to get to these. Okay. Thank you for coming. Thank you.
Oh, you did? Were they recording? Okay?
Oh, no,
Oh, do you need help?
Oh, no, it's fine. This is what I
Just say, well, you should need a best report. Yesterday you were fine.
I was fine yesterday.
You guys really enjoyed your presentation. I gave my last part of this table. She was not a very good steward of rushing out the door and trying to come up with something. I did mine on this first one on Monday morning. That first group, it's nice to have it out of the way.
Oh, yes, ma'am. No problem.
Yeah, and I would do the same.
Oh, good. Is this a
Very helpful.
Thank you. Thank you.
I wish I did. If you have one, I can kind of bounce. No, I should have been on the others. Oh, yeah. Ours has been very good. He sales the director of ours. It started kind of like Black Institutions Grants, which we landed, and then we just named it the African American Male Initiative. But it was but it's working really well. We've got some numbers now, and it's working well. It has its challenges, obviously, but it's working really well. So, St. Louis, Missouri, yes, St. Louis Community College, and
basically,
I'll look back.
Are you listening? Will you be overwhelmed if we have like 30 acres? No, or let us dive in over. I'll take it.